Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Panther build. This episode, I don't know why I paused there. This episode is going to follow on from the previous one about the pie cut exhaust. So I've done a little bit more since we last took a recording. Developed the exhaust routing a little bit more. So you pick this up at a point that I'm finalising the routing of the exhaust. I just kind of want to talk to you about some of the learnings that I've actually experienced on this. So hopefully it's useful. Stay tuned and let's get started. So learned quite a bit in the last video. Building a pie cut exhaust is actually quite difficult. Who would have thought it? The main thing I've struggled with was measuring inaccuracies. You kind of see. I don't know what had happened, but for whatever reason, when I measured out, the pies weren't quite the same as the initial pies that I'd made. So when I tried to weld them together, the bend radius was slightly different. And to be honest, that wasn't going to cut it for me, especially on the top of the bike. So you've seen this cutaway. So I've redone them. I recut them. I've got some scraps. That's fine. I bought extra because it's all part of the learning. But I recut these. And you can see in this video that I want them all to have the same profile as they exit the bike. As they go underneath the bike, I probably could have got away with it, but I still want that same curve going underneath the bike as well. So that was quite important to me. One of the other things that was important to me was the fact that they were all routed. They were all evenly spaced as they exited the bike, and the vertical section. Didn't want it kicking off to the left or the right. I kind of wanted them all straight up and down. And I may have made a sacrifice in terms of ground clearance because I've not angled them to go a certain way that tucks between the oil filter and side of the frame, for example. But again, I've seen plenty of other exhausts that are like this. The ground, I've probably lost half an inch max because the way the side stand hangs down is half an inch higher up. So I've not actually lost that much ground clearance. But that was a big challenge trying to get the pie cuts right. So thankfully I've had some helpful information from guy LC Cycle Works. He's a builder. I'll link him in my description, but he was giving me some tips on how to measure things out more accurately. So by using a piece of angle iron, you can easily mark out round tubing, which makes perfect sense when you hear it, but apparently I didn't think about that when I was doing it. So frustrating time spent in the garage. It never feels like learning at the time when you're knee deep in it. It's quite stressful, but in reality it's all good learning. So hopefully I'm able to share some more of these learnings as this video goes on. So unfortunately last week I was plagued with a few issues. My TIG torch decided to shit the bed catastrophically, which for whatever reason I'm not sure why, but our tech, who I bought my welder from, sent a whole replacement unit. So just because this bit actually broke, they sent me a whole new torch, cable, everything else, which was really generous of them. Didn't expect them to send that. I didn't expect them to send it straight away. So shout out to those guys. Similarly, I ran out of welding gas. I think some of the things I messed up in my settings and my post flow were, so when you take something together, it's got argon that flows for a period afterwards to stop the contamination, but that seemed to flow for about 6 or 7 seconds, and when you're tacking stuff together, that's quite a lot of gas it's going through in a short period of time. So topped off with that, I was practicing. As you can see in the corner behind me, there was an ottoman that I'm trying to make for my house that I've blatantly plagiarised off someone more talented than me on Instagram is selling them, and I thought, can't fit, I'll be able to make that myself. So, which I have, and I used it as good welding practice. Welding practice, that's another thing that's come to light, that I'm still very much a beginner at this, so certain motions are quite difficult. Going round a radius or a tubing, for example, I've tried a few sample bits already and I find it quite difficult at this stage. So that's one thing it's come to light. I will be tigging this whole thing together. I don't need to tig it all together right now, so what I'm going to do is make sure my final space out and my my routing of my pipes is finished, and I will squirrel away in the background and learn about how to weld stainless nicely, whether it's using various pulse settings, whether it's the most optimal way to back purge on a budget, the torch that I may upgrade to. I've got a 17 size torch at the moment. I'm quite tempted to invest in a number 9 torch and possibly a foot pedal just to help me. I've not got that at the moment, but that's quite expensive, bloody expensive, but it'll be worth it in the end. But things are, I'm not going to have a finished exhaust by the end of this video, but that's fine. One thing I am progressing with, and I'll touch on in a later video, is the plan and how we're progressing with it. And yeah, we've maybe stalled a little bit, but that's okay. It's to be expected. There's other things that are coming into play as to why that's taking a little bit longer. This video, we're going to talk into a little bit more detail as to how I've managed some of the routing on the bike. So you can see in this cutaway, I go down the side of the bike, and there's a bit that comes underneath. So there's a little bit of a ledge, a little mounting for the what do you call it, the kickstand, and that's, I didn't realise it was there before, and so what I've ended up doing is utilising some pie joints, twisted them around. Remember saying before, you can take pie joints, you can twist them, so you don't just have to go to 90 degrees. If you decide you go like that and you decide to twist one of them, then it's going to change the angle slightly. So if you start here and twist them all, you're going to get a nice S-bend. So that's exactly what I've done with some of the offcuts. I was able to create an S-bend. It's not the same radius as the bits that come out of the bike, but it doesn't actually matter. A, because you won't see it, but B, I wasn't going to keep wasting stuff if the stuff I had would do. No one's going to look at my bike and go, interestingly, the radius you used to bypass the kickstand mount is actually slightly less than the radius you had to come out of the bike. Well, f off, I don't care, I'm learning. So that's what I've used. So the bits coming out the bottom of the bike are a bit more complicated. So on that sketch, we've got 3 different routes of 3 different lengths, and hopefully that solves my initial design brief of having various length headers to allow me to have an unusual exhaust note. And with that comes a whole host of potential tuning complexities that I'll cross that bridge further down the line, but that will be cool. I hope it, really hope it works. The difficulty being, and the perfectionist in me will probably struggle to try and get this absolutely right, as you come underneath the bike, I want 3 equally spaced pipes. We'll talk about this once I've done a little bit more in the video and show you how I've done it, but 3 equally spaced pipes. If you're looking at it from the side, I just want them to all look as though they're in a line. So I've got a home point, I've got my first pipe, you can see in that video here, that is my home point. I now need to figure out what the spacing between that one and the middle one is, and then how I connect that middle one to the pipe that already exists. So I need to put a 90-degree bend in and some long pipe. So that's a bit of a decision. And then the final one is, how do I mimic that size again for the final pipe? The final one being the most difficult because it's got a bend in it. It's kind of, it's thereabouts. It's not as easy to get in and mock that up. So let's go have a little look and see how we can attack that. I'm going to go show you something before we go over to the bike. And this is, everyone's got this. You might not see a lot of this because maybe people don't want to share all this, their mistakes and everything else, but this is a box full of mistakes that I've made so far. And I make, right now, I've probably got 1.5 meters worth of stainless left, and that's fine. I bought 4 meters, 5 meters I think, so I should have enough left that I hopefully I don't mess up anything more. But I've tried just to practice my stainless welding, which is fine. That looks absolutely horrendous, and that's fine. It's the first time doing it. Some of the other bits, the radiuses I weren't very happy about, they were all tacked together. Same deal, I tried to set up a purge system, had all the bits, turns out it wasn't purging properly, turns out air was leaking. We can go into that in more detail, but it was difficult, I was struggling. That's where I made the decision, right, I need to spend a little bit more time learning, how to weld round this profile, which I always, like, I never really expected to be able to go on straight away and weld like sick Instagram welds that you see laying down big fat dimes. That'd be really cool to be able to do that, but that takes years of practice, and yeah, I've been doing this for a couple of months. So well, what I do want is to show you that have an end product that is something you can be proud of, and if I was to try and weld this together right now, look at the size of that hole. It's awful. I got quite pissed off there. That isn't how badly I welded this. I lost my rag and started throwing filler wire in it and seeing what would happen. So that's not as bad as it could be. But the welds that are the welds that you can see are ugly and shit, and that's not what I want this bike to look like. Disclaimer, I have mentioned from the outset that this bike's going to be black, all black, or have a really badass black theme. I'm likely going to ceramic coat this black. The reason I want to ceramic coat it is it's a thin coating. I'm hoping that my welds will be dinky enough and small enough that you still see the outline of all the pies, especially when it's ceramic coated. I think that will add a really cool depth to the pipe. I've seen some ceramic coated pie cut exhausts. There's not many of them out there, because why would you go down the route of pie cutting to ceramic coat it? And for me, I want to learn how to do a pie cut exhaust. The output of that is still, I want a black exhaust. Ceramic coating is better than that tinky wrap that I used on here. I don't think I'll use that wrap again for a while. I didn't like working with it. It seems like a cop-out. So yeah, this was a test for myself. The fact that I'm covering it all up and maybe hiding the lovely stainless colouring that I get maybe leads down the argument, should I have used mild steel to make my exhaust? Possibly. I'm gibbering. Let's go over and cut some more pies quickly. As we're cutting these pies, we can then head over to the bike and then show you some of the complications of routing this bad boy underneath the bike. Okay, so the biggest issue I have right now is, this is the first exhaust. If this is the front of the bike, and here's our 3 downpipes. And that's the one obviously clearing the kickstand. The difficulty I have now is making sure that I can get all 3 of these pipes in line, which sounds easier than it is. This is obviously not flat, but so I've got radiuses cut here and welded together, so I need to try and make sure that whatever this radius is, it's at the right distance, so that these points here are all the same distance apart. So what I'm thinking is, with this bit here, I'll weld on my straight first to allow me to get this bit, and then I'll be able to see how much I need to move it about. So if this ends up being slightly longer, that's fine. I can always chop it at the right length, but at least I've got enough length to get this in, enough length here to get that in there. Then once this one's set, I can then do a similar deal with this. This one probably needs to come out a little bit further before I can then do a hard, or I might end up going like that. I'm not really sure yet for this one, but I need to get this one sorted first. So we're going to go and have a look at this underneath the bike, but I thought I'd explain it first because it's going to be really difficult to kind of see what I'm doing. Okay, I hope this kind of makes sense. So this is what I was talking about. This is the first one, and it's done, and it may be a bit blurry because I'm focusing on this pipe here. One thing I need to do after all of this is figure out how to support the weight of all these, but we'll cross that bridge. So I've got this at the moment. If I was to just simply put that there, then it would butt hard against this. So what I need to do is realistically come out a little bit, but I don't want to come out so far that I'm going to be too far and then leave no room for this one here. Similarly, if I was to go directly on here, because of the angle that's cut on this thing here, it would actually point me too far out the other way. So I think what I'm going to do is like I was saying, I'll make the longer bit, weld the longer bit onto here first, which will put me out adjacent to this pipe, get into a place that I'm happy enough that the spacing between them is equal. Then I can figure out what the shape of that little section in here needs to be, whether it's cut like a bit of pie, or whether it's straight on one side and angled on the other, and what kind of angle we need. So I think that's probably the quickest, easiest way to do it. The other way you could do it would be to try and eyeball it, put that section in, and then try and guess where this long bit's going to go, but I don't think that's going to work. So we're going to go and just have a little stab at welding a straight bit onto here, and then we'll come back and have a look at this. Okay, so I have made another bit. If I butt that up nicely, so I just need to be sure that, because the bike's not, because the exhaust isn't supported yet, there's a bit of movement there, but I've obviously cut this at a 4.5 inch angle on this place here as well, so you're obviously looking at this right up close, but I'm quite happy with where that is. Whether or not I go up the way or down the way, I'm not sure yet. There's a bit of flexibility there, but I think what I'll do is I'll maybe tack this in place, and then I'll work on the last one. But all I've done is just, as you see, just I've stuck this on at the moment. But yeah, cool. Alright, so I'll disconnect the exhaust. I've marked it. I'm going to disconnect it, tack it together, put it back on, and then we can work on the final routing of the last little bit. We're getting there. Okay, it's now welded in place. It's obviously, I made this slightly too long anyway, just because I didn't want, there's going to be movement. If I really wanted to, I could push it back in place. You'll notice if you look at that angle, these don't match up exactly, but if you look down the front, oh shit, the spacing's quite nice between the two of them. Again, you're going to be looking at them from down here, if at all, so kind of happy with that. One thing to note is that I think because there is movement in here and flexibility, as long as I can get to with where I want it to be slightly, I can always, I think what my plan will be is to weld some stainless steel mounting loops on the top so I can bolt it to the frame, and then that will just be used to help pull it in line. Hopefully that makes sense. I've not bought that yet. One of the things I do need to consider is internal baffling, so whether it's just, I've seen one way you can do it is you can cut and put half washers in, spread out 180 degrees apart all the way along the tube. I'll try without them first to see how ear splitting loud it is and how if it impacts the tune, but probably likely go down that route as well. But what this now allows me to do is figure out routing for the final pipe, which is, I guess, you can see it, you just see the outside of it. Sorry, can we see it? See it there? So it's sitting a little bit higher in the back. It doesn't really matter, you're never going to see it. So I need to try and figure out how to get around these radiuses and then get me to come out to this point here. So still a bit of cutting and everything else to do, but we'll get there. Okay, so this bit's proven to be just a little bit awkward. These don't look all in line, but what I'm going to do is obviously once I'm happy with the final placement, I'll take brackets that feed off certain points of the frame to allow me to just pull these into line. This bit here, as I was saying, I'm away to get attacked by a puppy. Come on, mister. Right. Rufus. God knows what he's just taking. Right, so this bit's awkward. It's awkward to show. I've welded on an extra bit to this 90 degree to allow me to take me past this radius. As I was saying, these will all get tied up and held secured at some point a little bit better. But right, I'm probably stressing this too much, probably don't need to be, but perfectionism strikes again. So I might just bring my TIG torch over and try and secure this in place. Okay. I need a bench. So bad. So this is probably the most difficult part of this build, purely because it's this bit we need to get them all in line, which we can do to an extent, but we're fighting the issue that the exhaust is only supported at the front. There's a lot of weight acting on here. My arms are knackered trying to support this. If you look at that, so we're trying to get these in line. So I toyed with the idea of getting these to follow the frame, this radius in the frame, but I don't know if I can actually do that. Hello Rufus. So it's more just a case of kicking this back in line so it's in line with the rest of them, but again, easier said than done, because this is at an angle too far. What is it I need to do? This is difficult. I am sick of being on the floor. One thing I have done is made a template equally spaced. So obviously this one needs cut, middle one needs cut to length, just probably throwing the visual nature of this a little bit. But this last one is still proving a bit of a shit to get right. It's like I have to put another joint in. So this template's actually alright, it's holding them near enough in place. I think, could I have them closer together? Yeah, that's putting quite a bit of strain on the middle bit of the exhaust. So that's how it naturally wants to sit, that's how I'm naturally going to let it sit. What I want is for this one to naturally not look out of place. So the camera angle is throwing it a little bit, it doesn't actually look that out of place. But if I'm to weld it, like, I need it coming out. This is so awkward. Cool, this battery is a way to die as well. That's what I get for buying £3 Amazon batteries. Anyway, so I need to TIG weld this in place. You can see from the front here the variation in lengths that all need to be chopped to length, but this template is useful for that. We can mark to show what needs to be removed. I would be fairly confident in removing them because this template runs parallel with this face here, and that's ideally what I want. I want the exhaust to run parallel with that face. And I've also got to cut it to the shortest one, which is the first pipe. So I'm going to take this off, TIG weld it. One thing I do really need to start thinking about is how to mount, how to just brace that properly so that it's getting the right support. So we are now at a place where, so just sit around tasty coffee, sweet life juice during the day until lunchtime, and beer from lunchtime till morning. Savouring, not savouring, I've done the savouring. The final part of the exhaust is now welded in place. So tacked it in place, I actually took the pipes off and I tacked it in place at multiple points, and then I went around the rest of the pipes and tacked all them the bits that I wasn't able to tack because I was only able to take from one side when I was lying on the ground. So thought it would be a good opportunity just to kind of summarise some of the things that I've found now that I've got the base shape of my exhaust sorted. So I'm going to put that to one side, go away and practice my TIG, get better at it, and then come back to that. Maybe in a couple of weeks, maybe in 3 weeks. So this exhaust, this bike's not going to be running in the next month, so I've got time. It's probably not going to be running in the next 2 months, but we'll cross that bridge. So some of the things I've learned, I made a note on my whiteboard, and then there's some other things that I think I can think about to help buff this list out. So the biggest issues I had on this project was measuring inaccuracies, whether that was from the Sharpie being quite thick, whether that was from not being able to measure 180 degrees apart, so properly and accurately, and then even taking the time to when you flip the pipe in the bandsaw, that it's actually properly lined up and you're using the same point every time. When you're making pie cuts, it's quite easy to make a mistake and not realise, so often I tried to do a cut, do 2 cuts and check them, and the way I checked them was by pressing the 2 sides together, and then obviously the two bits I'd cut, they lined up, they looked perfect because they were using the same reference point that I had used. Whereas if I'd flipped it the other way and turned the pie cut the other way, I would have noticed they were off slightly. So yeah, this caused issues because it meant that you weren't getting, the peak of your angle wasn't at the top of your pipe at every single time, meaning that you were getting less. So long as you kept all of them in line, you were getting a straight radius, but you were getting less of an angle that you'd actually planned for. So instead of saying 4.5 degrees and 4.5 degrees, you were maybe getting 4.5 degrees and 3 degrees, or 4 and 4, or you just weren't getting the right amount of angles. Something else I noticed with my bandsaw, it's 6 AM, why is everyone up? Something I noticed with the bandsaw, if you look, you have to look straight down to get an accurate angle. You can't just eyeball the angle setting from a while back, from where you stand. You'd really have to get over to make sure that that's accurate. I could, in theory, if I wanted to, take a straight edge off a straight part of the saw and also try and measure that, and just to confirm I've got my exact 4.5 degree angle, but it's fine. Yeah, so that in itself caused a lot of the biggest stress. I'm an idiot. Where this would probably work out quite well is if you could try and cut all your pies in one go. So make sure you're dead on, and then cut as many pies as you think you need in one go. Get it over and done with. It means that you're buffing it on the buffer to take off any straight sharp edges as well, and it's quite a timely process, but doing that once, getting it out of the way, means that the rest of the time you can just worry about assembling this giant big boy Meccano set with your welder. So, speaking about the welder, the TIG settings plagued me a little bit. I obviously learned the lesson about having too much purge, too much post flow, which ate through my gas, and that was absolutely fine. But also, there's the odd time where it would just blow holes into the metal. And that's quite, especially if you've not got an exact lineup for whatever reason, it would just start to blow holes. So I played a bit with my TIG settings quite a lot, and I found it at a point around about 65-70 amps where it was quite happy to, even if you had not the best fit up, you could heat up both sides and then make sure you got a bit of a tack in place. I'm obviously still going to go and try and TIG all this together, so that's another lesson for me for another time. I mentioned about not noticing the final path of the exhaust past the kickstand mount. Well, I always knew that I was going to go under the bike, but where exactly that lines up to the kickstand mount, you can't really predict unless you're some kind of CAD wizard or something else where you decide to mock this whole thing up and measure. A lot of this is done by feel. So yes, I know I want 390 degree bends at the top, 390 degree bends at the bottom. After that, it's not as if I know exactly where the routing of those pipes is going to go, because I'm trying to line it up in the frame. I'm trying to, it's something that you do in real time. So it meant that the bit that on this side just coincided with the kickstand mount, and to be honest, that was a nice little challenge, having to create that S-bend and get out of the way. I'm quite happy with how the exhaust turned out overall. Quite chuffed with the routing. I do obviously need to try and mount that in place. I've had an interested person asking if I'd make another one, possibly. I'd really want to it's been quite a labour intensive thing, and I've got my other builds, but if it means I can make a bit of money off it, then absolutely. One thing I would note is that this is specifically for my bike. I'm quite happy to go and weld on mounts if need be, because the bike's getting taken apart. So if I start looking at trying to build these, I would have to try and utilise existing engine mounts of the base bike, just so that you would have a repeatable design that anyone could use. One thing, there's two more things. One thing, I think that this may move slightly when I weld it together, just with all the pulling forces and everything else. So I'm going to weld each pie individually and go about it that way, but that's why I've not put those mounts on yet, because if it moves, I want to see where it's happy sitting, and then I don't want to try and put a mount in that forces it down and fatigues the metal through its life, especially if it's running. If the engine's running and it's putting vibrations all the way through it, and I've put a downward force on the exhaust because I've had to pull the mount into place, I'd rather just get it TIG welded together, and then, because I'm not going to TIG weld it in situ, I'm going to TIG weld it on my bench. So, and then finally, to stop me gibbering, get a bloody lift, get a bike lift. I think a project like this would be made way easier with a bike lift. I've been able to pull something together, which is fine, but getting a bike lift would mean I could pull my TIG torch over a lot easier. I could sit and I could tack things in situ probably a lot easier. So that's a big lesson. I know that's for everyone, that's maybe not the easiest thing to go and get. I've not got one that costs money, so I want to try and do this with the resources I had. The capital outlay, if you're looking to build your own pie cut exhaust and you've not got any equipment, it's probably quite a lot. My welder plus gas plus masks was about £650. I bought that as an investment to teach myself how to TIG weld. My bandsaw, which made this job a hell of a lot easier, was about £380. So we're over £1,000 already, I think, maths. Finally, the materials itself was about £85 for this. So it does mean the next time I want to build a TIG exhaust, I've got all the resources there and everything else, but worth bearing in mind if you fancy doing this. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up. So thank you for watching. It's been a bloody long slog, probably about 80 minutes of your life that you'll never get back, so hopefully it's been worthwhile. I've got a few ideas for the next video, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But in the meantime, if you like what you saw, please like the video, share it with all your friends, and subscribe to my channel, and we will catch you in the next video. Take it easy, folks.